Hi, I'm Richard Vranch and welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show.
Richard Vranch, welcome to the Sarah O'Connell Show. How are you today?
I'm okay, as well as you can be under the current circumstances.
You have a PhD in physics, which you studied at Cambridge University. Tell me, what is your favourite piece of science? What's your favourite scientific fact?
The fact that the speed of light is constant. The fact that, however fast you run towards light, it still comes at you at the speed of light. That's a bit of a mind warper, but that's the thing that led Einstein to come up with all the clever things he did. It's got to be the best bit, really.
It's a weird thing though, isn't it? Because light travels at a certain speed, but time is based on perception. So people can be, if someone's accelerating faster than someone else, time is different for them than it is for someone on Earth.
Yeah, and
is light still traveling at the same speed?
Light travels at the same speed, but if, for example, you're drunk, it seems to be going slower.
That's very true. Now, speaking of which, do you have a theory of how we exist? Do you think there was Big Bang theory? Is it string theory? Is it simulation theory? Is it the wild dream of an exotic space hamster?
It could be all of those things, of course, but probably Big Bang is very, there's a lot of evidence for that.
There's like 10 series of it now, isn't there?
Yeah. They still keep making it, don't they? That's really weird.
So originally, obviously, you were studying science, and that must have been something that took a good number of years, unless you got a PhD in a day like I did. But what were you originally planning on doing?
I've never, ever had any plans and still don't. I've kind of done things because the fun people were doing them. So I went to college quite unexpectedly and I wasn't even that keen to go. And I had already worked for a bit before I went, and then I was good at exams when I was young. And I stayed on because the fun people I knew were staying on because they were a bit younger, so they weren't leaving. So I ended up doing research by accident, really, and spent most of my time, I'm sorry to say, off touring, doing comedy shows and sketch shows. And in '81, I started a double act with Tony Slattery. He was about the same age as me, a bit younger. So we started doing that in '81. Then we brought that down to the London comedy circuit. And that's when lots of things were coming together, because university comedy had dominated up till then, mainly because universities had drama societies and comedy societies. So they literally had a platform when they could get out and try stuff and fail and get better. So up at the Edinburgh Fringe and stuff, where I first went in the '70s, it was dominated by universities and medical society review. And it was only when the Comedy Store opened in '79 and other little comedy clubs that people who maybe hadn't gone to college had their platform to get out and try it and get better and practice. So in the early '80s, people from universities, not just Cambridge, but also Manchester and Bristol and lots of other, comedy society universities, and a lot of these new stand-ups that were coming through from the comedy clubs in London and around the country. And also the street performers from Covent Garden, sort of Eddie Izzard and the Vicious Boys and all those guys. We all kind of came together when the club started opening, and that's what became the alternative comedy, the alternative cabaret scene. And so that's how it all kind of mixed up about that time.
You've done traditional stand-up and, of course, improv. Is one of them easier or more stressful to do than the other? Because, of course, with traditional stand-up, you go on stage knowing that you've got your material and you have your tried and tested stuff and you know it works. But then you've also got the pressure of writing new material, whereas with improv, you don't necessarily know what you're going to do at all when you get on stage. And that must be freeing, and it must keep things new for you. But is there added stress just in case you aren't entertaining people on that particular evening?
Well, you've summed it up perfectly, actually. It's two different things. It's like food and drink. They're kind of, they're similar but not the same. A lot of stand-ups who really take hours and hours to write 20 minutes or an hour every year probably get a bit annoyed with improvisers who go on and don't have any of that stress, but at the same time, it's a bigger risk. When a stand-up does, or if I'm doing stand-up and I put in a line that I've never done before, that I then remember and write down and keep, that's my favourite line of the set. That element of surprise is always pleasing. I'm sure a lot of stand-ups would think that, but it's two different things. It's nice to be able to structure something and learn the way it works best and all that stuff. But at the same time, the joy of improvising is it's a team sport. Stand-up is doing it on your own. Improvising it is doing it in a team, because you bounce off each other and you surprise each other, and that's where the enjoyment of that comes from. Especially when you're on tour, you tour with a bunch of improvisers, be it around the UK or around the world, and you've got your mates with you. It's almost like a holiday, and the show is a very pleasant 2 hours of the day. But it's just fun being in a group. Whereas, you know, there are many stories of the kind of loneliness of the travelling, jobbing stand-up in those days when we had gigs.
The Comedy Store Players launched in 1985. How did you first get involved with that?
I first got involved with the Comedy Store Players because Neil Malarkey, who was one of the founder members, along with Mike Myers and Kit Hollaback and Jeremy Hardy and Dave Cohen, and I knew Neil from college, so he asked me to come along initially to do music, but I wasn't very happy to do that because I had already had a double act with Tony and I was doing comedy stuff, so I kind of wanted to do the games as well. So that's how I went along. And Neil Malarkey asked me, and I actually joined as a member of the team in '86, just before Mike Myers left to go over to Canada and start his amazing, Wayne's World and all that business over in the States. So yeah, that's what it was. I joined in '86 when Neil asked me.
As you mentioned, Mike Myers was part of the original lineup, and he left in '86, I think, to return to Canada, and then he later went on to be on Saturday Night Live and Wayne's World and Austin Powers and all that good stuff. Did he ever return to the Comedy Store Players or keep in touch with anyone at that point after he left in '86?
Yeah, if he's in London, which he sometimes is. I mean, he grew up in England. He loves England. He comes down and guests with us. Well, except strictly speaking, he's not a guest. He's a Comedy Store Player.
Yeah.
When Mike does come down and drop in, he's extremely good at it because it's a big North American tradition, Canada and the States, before it was big here. And so he was so much better than us and taught us how to do it. And I think we were slightly in awe of him, as we still are. And if he hadn't gone, I don't think we'd have found our own voice. And when he came back after a few months, I think he already noticed that we'd had to kind of find our way of doing it. And the Comedy Store Players, and Paul and Josie, who joined about the same time, and myself and Neil, we've kind of been the core of it over those years since now. And so it's weird that a comedy group like that has kept going with the same people. There are lots of groups where the lineup changes every year, like the Footlights or Second City. But we actually managed to get in the Guinness Book of Records as being the longest group with the same lineup. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, really.
Is that something that, I guess, at this point, while you still stay together, that's a record that can't be beaten, and at this point, it can't be for a very long time?
That's very logically true.
Yeah. Does it still count as long as, does every single one of you perform every single week, or if you sort of interchange 5 or 6 of you or something, and then but the whole collective is still part of that group, that still counts?
The way it works is that there are 6 members of the Comedy Store Players who are the Comedy Store Players, and those are the 6 people who are in this video that we're releasing. And in all those 35 years we've been together, we've never ever allowed a show to be filmed or to be released. So this is the first time in 35 years that we're doing it. And those are the 6 Comedy Store Players. So myself, Josie Lawrence, Andy Smart, Lee Simpson, Neil Malarkey, and Paul Merton. Now, if one of us isn't, we normally would play Wednesday night and Sunday night at the Comedy Store. So over 100 shows a year. And we've been doing that for all that time. So we really have got a lot of hours, miles on the clock. But if one of us can't be there, for example, Paul doesn't do the Wednesday shows, he just does the Sunday. So that would leave a guest spot. And then we have a wonderful sort of team of guests who come in and they bring their own energy and skills and talents to the show. So, people like Pippa Evans and Ruth Bratt and Carrie-Ad Lloyd and Lauren Shearing. And then we have musicians that come in, like we have Kirsty Newton and Steve Edis, and Colin Sellers done it. Dear Neil Innes used to come in and do it. Very sad that Neil's no longer with us. And we have a lot of male guests too. We've got Steve Frost, Steve Steen, Neil Ashdown, David Reed. So we've got so many brilliant guests. There's always at least one Comedy Store player there, but it does mean that we can go off and do tours, or Josie can go off and do a play, or Paul can go off and make a documentary, and that sort of spot is filled while they're not there. But the video that's coming out is the 6 core team.
That's amazing. And what do you attribute to your lasting success, and I guess the luck of the chemistry that you all have together, because that's a long time to work with people.
It is a long time, but we don't live in each other's pockets. We come in twice a week and do the show. It's quite therapeutic, because doing this show, however you're feeling, whether you're feeling up or down, to go on stage, you go into a kind of a trance state. The audience shouts something stupid at you, and you are stupid in response. It's like therapy, really. So we always have fun doing the show. So whenever we are together, it's fun, and so that means we'll stay together, because it's always a good experience being together.
I think that really comes across on stage as well. You can tell that you're having a lot of fun, in response, the audience has even more fun watching.
Well, thank you. I think if we're not enjoying it, how can we expect the audience to, really? But also, it is improvised, and we don't know what the other one's going to say, and you can't kind of blame us for laughing sometimes, though that's slightly unforgivable in a scripted show if you're kind of faking your quarters. But you know, we got the best seats in the house, and it's weird watch. I mean, the fact that we're releasing a video of the show is weird, because I've actually watched it and I've never seen the show before. And it's
I suppose it's hard to, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it's a weird feeling that I don't remember a single second of doing it, because when you're doing it on stage, you're in the moment and you hear something and you respond to it, and it takes you somewhere else, and then something else is happening very quickly afterwards. It's not like a scripted show where you remember what it was. Oh, that bit went well tonight. Oh, that bit will go better tomorrow. And it was like watching a bunch of strangers. Odd experience.
It's nice to be able to have that experience, though, and experience your own show as an audience member.
Yeah, and also it's shot very much as a theatrical thing. It's like being at the Comedy Store. You can hear the audience. This was done like 18 months ago, so it was with an audience. There's laughs you can hear. It's not like we've done it in an isolated theatre, or we haven't done it on little boxes on the screen. It's a proper show, so you kind of feel like you're there. And improv is one of those things where you sort of have to be there. It's great to be there and shout suggestions, and there's in-jokes that will only happen that night, and the audience kind of feels like they're part of the show by the end of it. You don't, obviously we can't take the suggestions from you in this video because it's recorded, but it's the next best thing. And it's kind of shot on a wide shot, so you can see the whole stage. You can see people who aren't necessarily speaking, enjoying what is being said. So it's very much like being at the show, actually.
So as you say, normally you perform the show twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays, and now the video has been released. It's being released today, in fact. So where can people go to find it?
Okay, I've written this down. The website you go to is called thecomedyStoreLive.co.uk, and I'm going to hold that up on a piece of paper. This is the same graphics they use on, I'm sorry I haven't a clue, on the radio. thecomedyStoreLive.co.uk, and it's £7.50, and it's just over an hour. As I say, it's if you've ever been to see the show and enjoyed it, you'll have had to have been there to see it. And this is the first time anyone's ever had the chance to kind of be there without going. So it's kind of probably cheaper than actually going to the show, given that you get drinks at off-licence prices and not have to get a taxi.
Or if you live in another country, you don't have to get a plane.
Well, that's right. I mean, there's so much going on in the world. It's you kind of feel that you should be, supporting these worthy causes and doing what we can against the virus and stuff. But I have to say, we also need a laugh. And this, I've watched it, and I'm embarrassing to say I did laugh. So I'm quite fussy about info too.
The Comedy Store very kindly provided me with a copy of it too, and it's hilarious. I highly recommend everyone watches it. It's a lot of fun. I'm actually planning on watching it again tonight.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you and me are the only people at this point in time who've...
Amazing. It's very exciting, isn't it? And it's over an hour. I think it's an hour and 1 minute something. So it's
Yeah, there's
extra value.
including the interval, without giving anything away. There is an interval.
And instantly, you can have as many as you want. You can pause it. You can go and get a drink. You can come back. You can make it last an entire day if you want to.
Well, okay. Yeah. It's the Comedy Store releases stand-up videos once a week, normally on the Saturday, I think. And this one's going to be available from 7:30 tonight, Wednesday the 3rd, because 7:30 Wednesday is when our show would normally start. So it's kind of at its normal place in the week. And then it'll be available until Saturday, when the next stand-up show will take its place.
So what was the original plan? Was the show just recorded to get some clips to put online, or assumedly you don't record shows all the time?
I'm not sure why the show is recorded. It might be in case, I don't know, of incident or question, I don't know, or it might just be that, I really don't know why, but it turns out, although no one ever thought they would be useful to release, that there is a very high quality recording of the show. Also, the sound is very good. One of the things about a lot of the stuff that's going on now in shutdown is the sound is quite difficult to get right. But luckily, with the Comedy Store players, we wear these little sort of head mics so that we can move around and use our hands. And they pick up the sound very well. And Simon Mason, the technical manager, and in fact, all the technical guys at the store are really top of their game. And so this actually looks and sounds, you know, it is properly recorded, so it's kind of broadcast quality.
Do you think that might be something you, now that you've done this, consider doing more of in the future? Because I think it's an amazing idea.
Oh, thank you. I don't know what's in the archive. Normally it is kind of sealed up, like, you know, like a bank in Harry Potter. So I'm not quite sure what they've got there. This is one that Simon found and edited down. Improvisation is difficult to edit. The logic of the scenes is so mad because lots of people are adding to the story. It's not like a narrative that's been written where it's quite easy to edit because there's a kind of a line. So you tend to use whole games or not use the game at all. If you take a bit out, then you don't know what's going on. And so editing a show down is tricky. With the stand-ups, of course, you've got stand-ups doing their 20-minute sets and a compare. Probably easier to edit down, I don't know. But they're also very good shows that the Comedy Store are putting out at weekends, as I was saying. I'm not sure if we'll have any more of these. This could be a really unique event. And what we're hoping is, because it's only available from Wednesday until Saturday, if people do watch it and like it, you know, if they kind of tweet or something, at least then people would still have time to get it between now and Saturday.
And it's such a unique thing too. I mean, this show, for example, as you know, is completely scripted. So my questions, your answers, we've been working on this for several years now. Yeah. And I'm hoping we can do the entire thing in one take, or we're going to have to start again for the 94th time. Tell me about some of the games that you play on stage, because there's some staples, aren't there, that you return to, but obviously they're different each time because they're dependent on the suggestions from the increasingly drunk audience.
We do play the same kind of games each week. We start with the story game where one of us points at the others, and when the finger moves to the next person, you carry on the story. And if any of us trip on our words or leave a gap, then the audience shout, whoops, and we have to leave the stage. So that kind of gets us all warmed up, and it gets the audience warmed up. And so that's a standard game. But, you know, in this particular video on release, it's quite an interesting story, and it's very funny. And even during the story, we start taking the mickey out of each other, which is kind of what we do. And that's because we've been together so long. So although improv is a big thing that is being taught to people who aren't necessarily performers, but, you know, for social skills or team building, that kind of thing, there are a lot of rules of improv, things you do and shouldn't do. I'm afraid we break most of them because a lot of those rules are there in order to keep the scene going. Yeah. But we're kind of at the stage where we don't need the stabilizer wheels on the bike. So, so although we play games, often we're not really playing the game. It's more about us taking that game apart. And that's what you get with the confidence of being together for 35 years.
Exactly.
So for example, that, you know, but there are some games which we play straight. A lot of people's favorite game is the game where three people are talking one word at,
Yes,
and they're being
I
questioned.
love that.
It's a great game, isn't it? But the great thing about that game is, if you're one of those three people, you can't show off. You're not in charge. You have to not think, react instinctively. All those kind of impro lessons have to be stuck to in that game. And the audience kind of like it because they can see what's going on. Oh, I see, they've got to speak one word at a time. And people often go home and play it at home, and, you know, around Christmas dinner, family sort of game that people play at home. So that's a good game. That game, you have to play that straight. Then other games, if we're doing, there's no story games in this one, but if we do a story game, often the story gets subverted and the storyteller comes into it. And that's because we've got the confidence to break the rules. There's the gibberish translator game is in this video, which again is everyone's favorite, and that's pretty clear how that works. And I think what we have got, our experience, means that we instill confidence in the audience, that when we walk on, we know what we're doing and it's going to be all right. And when you watch comedy and you're an audience member, that's what you want to feel. That's why people take to a stand-up within seconds of them opening their mouth. That thing that's so hard to learn about giving the audience confidence is going to be all right. Especially with impro when there's no script. The audience might be thinking, oh God, I hope this is all right. But I think we bring that to the stage. So sometimes if we muck about with the games a bit, at least we're doing it kind of knowing what we're doing.
There's so much variety too. I mean, there's singing, there's the game, as you mentioned, which was really funny, where you're saying one word at a time. There's the one where someone's performing something, but then someone else gets pointed at and they have to continue doing it, and then someone else is pointed at. It could be mid-sentence, and there was one bit where someone hadn't said the T on the end of a word, so then someone else said it. And I love stuff like that. It really is a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. And all that happens in such lightning speed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you can't really ever recreate that. If you were trying to make new improvised scenes on Zoom, just that tiny split-second delay is what we have over the audience because of our experience and the fact we've worked together so much. It's very hard. I'd say it's impossible to do that remotely.
And that's exactly why we're actually in the same room at the moment. Both sides entirely decorated differently, but we have laptops and we're just sat in front of each other.
Yeah, 2 meters.
It has to be 2 meters, yeah. Heaven forbid that the comedy store is ever bought out by another company. Would you then change your name to the Greg's Bakery Players?
I can't see that happening, to be honest. The Comedy Store, although it's kind of famous as being the most famous comedy club in the country, and at the beginning of the new comedy wave in '79, and with improv with us guys, weirdly it's kind of a family business. Don Ward, it's his thing. He still comes in and says hello. He's always there. He's been there from the beginning, and is, you know, and all of his family is. Although we've been there since '85, '86, some of the staff have been there even longer.
That's incredible.
So I mean, I'm sure when you go into some franchise bar in the West End, half the staff don't know each other, or they've come from a different branch, or they've been there for a week, or they're only there for a month or something. Maybe people realise this, maybe they don't, but the Comedy Store is a real family. Right through the kitchen, the guys on the door, the box office, the technical guys, the guys in the office and the managers, everybody really knows each other. And it's a real family business. So I don't think he's going to sell out to a pizza place. By the way, the pizza's very good at the Comedy Store. It really is good. So I hope that when people watch this video, who normally come and watch us down in the West End, I hope they'll be getting a pizza in for the interval.
The thing is, because every show is completely different, so you could go and watch it every Wednesday and Sunday and see something completely different, and that's the amazing thing about it, I think.
Well, we're very lucky to have such loyal fans. A lot of them do come, maybe not to every show, but to many, many shows. We've got people that have been to over 100 shows. We've got people who met there and have subsequently married and so on. And very lovely. I think we may even have people that have met there, got married, and when their kids have become 18, have then come along with the kids.
That's
So
incredible.
it's a weird thing. The Comedy Store is known mainly for stand-up comedy, but this improv thing that's been going on has led to a lot of other improv groups, a lot of comedians and improvisers that now guest with us tell us, oh, I used to come and see you when I was a student in London, or you were the first comedy I ever saw. And it's really nice that we're still going for a start, but it's really nice that I think we've spawned a lot of other stuff. And of course, on the old Whose Line Is It Anyway TV shows, the Whose Line began 3 years after us. And we kind of asked them, and if you look back at the old episodes with Clive Anderson, from the Comedy Store Players, Josie Lawrence from the Comedy Store Players, Paul Merton, Richard Vranch, whatever, Sandy Toksvig at that time. So weirdly, those early shows are still shown in the States. And so from the Comedy Store Players, we're actually getting advertising on American television even now. So when they came over to London, we get a lot of tourists in that have seen us on the telly from there.
Speaking of which, Whose Line Is It Anyway debuted in 1988. You appeared in 87 episodes of it. How did you get involved in that? Was that through extension of being in the Comedy Store Players?
Yeah, I mean, the producer was aware of us, came to see us, and he had John Sessions was, John Sessions was a big sort of Channel 4 name in the early, at that time, and he was in every episode of the first series. And then you'd always have a couple of Comedy Store Players because we were very experienced at doing the scenes and keeping them going. And then you'd have like a big name, sort of Graham Garden or somebody who'd come in and do it. Did Graham do it? Whatever. People like that, quite big names. Or Betty Thomas from the American TV series came over, and so it was a weird mixture. But yeah, all the players kind of at that time did it. Obviously, I got asked to do the music because I had that skill as well, which was very nice to be asked, and lots of good has come out of the program. Bit frustrating not to be able to do the games as well. And actually, that's people seeing this video, if they haven't seen the live show, will think, hang on, what's he doing? Piano players. That's always quite nice when people come to the Comedy Store and say, you do the games? Yes, I know. Yeah. They're always very, very complimentary, and that's a bonus for those who've maybe seen us on the telly but not seen the live show. So yeah, I was asked to do that. All the Comedy Store Players were, and then it took off in the series 2 and 3, and it went right through to the mid-90s, I think.
And so you obviously played piano on the show, but you also played guitar. How many instruments can you play? Are they the main two?
Yeah. Well, these days, none really. My fingers are very arthritic, and I actually sort of can't make chords anymore on a guitar. And hard, I play 2 or 3 fingers if required. Though, as I say, Kirsty Newton, my goodness, she's good, and Steve Edis and the other, and Alex Ross, the proper piano players we have guesting with us when we can to do the music properly. They're terribly good. But back in the day, I did play the guitar and I did play the piano, and it's funny really because just like I was saying with the verbal improv, when you're there doing it, you just do it, and you don't really think about it or remember it. And so I've got no recollection of any of those things. And people come up, oh, we love that bit you did. You and Mike did that thing with the, with the photocopier and the giraffe. And great. I don't know what you mean. It's quite weird. It's like sort of being in a trance state, really.
So one of the most famous games in Whose Line Is It Anyway was the Hoedown. Where did the music from that come? Was that originally improvised?
Well, yeah. The first time the Hoedown was done, it was all improvised, and the music has to be improvised. You can't just use someone else's tune and change the words. That's copyright. So I think I was contractually obliged never, ever to use any fraction of any other tune. I improvised what sounded vaguely like a Hoedown. And then the producer, completely against the spirit of improvisation, said, do it like that next time. So it was improvised. It is actually registered with the Performing Rights Society as my composition.
Wow.
Though nothing seems to come through from America, but they still make the show. But no, that was a thing where it became a kind of a rhythmic template in the way that a limerick is, or a haiku.
Yeah.
I'm not. If someone improvises a limerick or improvises a haiku, it's still improvisation, even though there is structure. Just like some improv games have structure, like gibberish translator, whatever. It doesn't mean it's not improvised. It means there is a structure. and the hoedown became a structure. Yeah.
So I suppose you must get to the point where obviously if people are learning to play the piano, they're learning the notes and they're reading the sheet music, but it must get to a point where it's like speaking, so you can just express music and go, oh, I'm going to play this tune now, and you don't have to sort of think about that in advance or have something preloaded.
Well, I can't read music. I mean, I never have. So I'm not a musician. I failed grade 2. I've never called myself musician or made a living out of it. But I've got a good ear, and that's the same. That's an improviser's ear. The same ear that when you're doing a spoken scene, you listen and you respond. Exactly the same exchange is happening with a musical improvisation, except it's more obvious because the 2 people or the 3 people are in the same key and in the same rhythm. So it's evident that there's cooperation going on, but exactly the same stuff's going on in a verbal scene.
I would say that almost makes you more of a musician, because if an artist is just copying someone else's work, I mean, they're skilled to doing that and reproducing it, but if you're able to express your own, and not only that, but just to create it simultaneously, do you not think?
No, not really. I mean, I've met some proper musicians. I mean, when you go to a gig and you see someone playing the guitar or playing the piano or whatever, or singing, you know, you just sit back and you're blown away by it. And being able to sort of do something in the style of something it's a party piece, I suppose, and perfect for the program. I was lucky to have that because a lot of people can do it. All the people I've mentioned before, and Colin Sell, who did the radio version, which preceded the TV version. He's marvellous on I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, and guests with the players too. There are some very good people around doing it. But then Colin's a proper musician as well, you know, and yeah, there's some good people out there doing it.
Series 3 and 4 of Whose Line Is It Anyway was filmed partly in New York. Why was that?
I don't know, but we had a great time. Yeah. They even reconstructed the set so it looked like the London set. I guess, I don't know, that's how it happened. It made it easy for them to get American guests. And obviously Infro was big in the States, bigger than it was in the UK. So that meant the producer could more easily book American guests. But by taking the whole production crew out to New York, it was quite a lot of effort to book more American guests. But it was great fun. We had a nice time. And of course, they still make it. Whose Line was great because it introduced the idea of comedy improv to the world. But I would still say that the players were a big part of getting Whose Line off the ground. You know, the pilot version that me and JC were in and the first series, I think the players were a big part of it. And the reason we were so able to fit in there was because we'd already been doing the Comedy Store Players for 3 years. And that's difficult to explain to people, what's the Comedy Store Players, because you have to be there.
Yeah.
First day, you don't have to be there. It's astonishing that we've done 35 years worth of shows and no one's ever seen them. But today, at 7:30, which is very near now, people can actually download it. So so you know, when we do return to the Comedy Store, hopefully this will encourage some more people to come down and see us. Our loyal fans, we couldn't do it without our fans. Our guests and our fans are why we've been able to keep going so long. Our guests have been there when a few of us haven't been. Our fans have kept supporting us all the way through. And of course, I'm sure our fans will enjoy the novelty of seeing us at home rather than in the store. But hopefully this will also spread out to a few people that haven't been able to get down to see us for one reason or another. One reason being you have to be 18 because of the licensing at the store. You know, it's not a particularly rude show. I suppose you call it PG. But I'm also quite looking forward to the fact that some of our regulars have got teenage kids who can't come to see the live.
Yes.
Will be able to see this.
It really is a lot of fun, and I think it's testament to the fact that the Comedy Store Players came together in the 1980s, and the show is still fresh and dynamic and interesting, and you've still got amazing chemistry together. There's a few more things I must ask you about too. So obviously you started off doing science and you went into comedy. You've done several science shows. So you hosted Beat That Einstein, appeared on Infinite Monkey Cage, but most intriguingly, you teamed up with Pippa the Ripper as Dr. Hula. What was that about? Can you explain that collaboration? Because I've seen some of it online and it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, Pippa the Ripper, Pippa Coram is one of the world's best hula hoopers, also a Guinness World Record holder for fire hooping, I think. And she's moved to the continent now, but when she was in London, we fancied doing a show together. So because Robin Ince and Brian Cox have created this amazing new platform for entertaining and informative science with all of their shows at the Bloomsbury and the Hammersmith Apollo, suddenly there was a platform to do something geeky. So basically we just put a little electron on lots of hula hoops, and I chuck one, and we come on in the white coats like professors, and then she takes her white coat off and she's dressed like a hula hooper because she's a circus person. And so the first hoop has got going round with one electron, that's, you know, I do hydrogen jokes. Throw another hoop on, that's helium jokes, and so on. we finish on a water molecule.
Fantastic. And now obviously you're in this amazing improv group, you're in the Guinness Book of World Records for it as well. You've travelled and toured all around the world, but I think perhaps the most prestigious thing, and when people think about the most and probably aspire to, is the fact that you've got a block of flats named after you in Little Britain.
Yeah, that was, Matt is very sweet. I didn't know about that, and it was
Really?
It was the very first episode as well. So I was at home sort of interested to see what it was like, because it had already been on the radio, and I was working with the producer, Ashley Blaker, and so I settled down for a nice, you know, a beer, and then when your name comes up on the screen, you're not expecting it, you sort of think, okay, either this is weird or I'm going mad. You know, it's the sort of thing you would tell a psychiatrist and they sort of press a secret red button. But no, it was a fun thing. And the fact, the subsequent weeks, it was Jim Sweeney House and it was Sandy Toksvig House. They just took a load of names off the Who's Line credits.
In addition to comedy and music and science, you've also been involved in developing animated sequences and comic strips and all that kind of stuff. How did you get involved with that?
I've always loved animations. Because animations aren't for kids. The Simpsons isn't a kid's show. It's a comedy show. So, but even before that, and the Animaniacs and things like this. So I occasionally had ideas that would only work in animated form. And luckily, I had a friend called Lucy Allen, who's a brilliant artist. And so, in the very early days of Mac computers, I sort of invested heavily in the equipment and got her to draw lots and lots of frames, you know, the old-fashioned way you would make an animation. Then you compile the frames up into little video sequences, which in those days you actually set the thing to render overnight, and then you get up the next morning and then 1 minute would be finished.
I have to do that with my show now.
You can do that sort of thing on a phone now. So yeah, so I got together with Lucy and we did some cartoons, which would be, you know, just little thing for Punch and magazines like that. And then the animations, we made a few. We did some stuff for Smack the Pony, and we did some corporate stuff for Boots, and we had a thing in the Millennium Dome. But it was just one of those things. But Lucy's now moved on to other things, and animation, when you're doing it like that, it takes months. A person sat in a room, drawing a picture, drawing a slightly different picture, and then so on and so on. And it is so laborious, and therefore it's very expensive, and it takes time, and it was a nice thing to have done, but I don't think I'm the sort of person that could ever do that for a living.
As it happens, I have a degree in traditional animation.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is kind of fun, but as you say, it takes a long time to do. There is kind of something I'm developing in my spare time, but the amount of spare time you need to do even a short animated film is a lot of time. Yeah. So it's kind of something I continue working on in the background, but I love doing caricatures and, you know, paintings and scenery and all that good stuff as well. So I still do quite a lot of art, but animation is incredibly time intensive.
Yeah. I mean, you know, yes. Well, you know exactly that the problems, but with computers, it's now easy to compile it into the finished product, as long as you scan every frame, and the computer does the rest quite quickly these days. You don't have to wait all night.
Well, yeah, the good thing is too that if you draw digitally, if you've got a graphics tablet, then you can. In the old days, obviously, you'd have there's special, you know, like tracing paper, and you draw on it and you do the next frame and the next one, and you'd scan it. And in fact, it was worse than that, because I used to draw the frame in pencil so I could rub bits out and change them. Then I'd go back over it with a black line, and then I'd scan it. Then I'd go back over it with a digital line, and then I'd colour it in, and it was horrible.
Yeah, God.
But yeah, I still love it if anyone else does it. It's a thing I prefer to watch because it's less time intensive. Until I get a massive studio full of people, and then I might get back to it. So you've done voiceovers for documentaries, and you've done adverts. You've even done an ice cream advert in Italy. Which have been your favourite to work on?
It's who you're doing it with, and generally speaking, people that make adverts, whether you're in vision or whether you're doing the voice, they tend to be really good at their job, because they're making very short little films, very high budget. It's got to be spot on. So you've got all the best people working on them, and they tend to be a lot of fun. And weirdly, I don't even mind, even the voice jobs when you're sort of advertising some product. Weirdly, it's like it's a mini adventure. It's kind of they'll give you some weird note about, okay, well, you've done it like this. Can you make it sound a bit more? And you kind of think, well, that's a weird request, but it's quite an interesting challenge. It's people look down on adverts, but actually that you have to be really precise. So I regard it as you know, a proper acting job, which sounds a bit naff, but you've got to take it seriously.
And you've only got 30 seconds to sell a product and entertain people, hopefully, and all this other stuff going on at the same time.
I mean, and also sometimes you sort of do, okay, well, that was 6.7 seconds. We need it 6.6. Can you do it again? and you kind of get a clock in your head, and you kind of can do that sort of thing. And that's quite a sort of technical challenge, really. It's like a sort of a workout for the brain. They know who's good at what. There are some sort of things I couldn't do, and other ones I think I'm pretty good at. And you tend to get booked for the ones that you're pretty good at. That, you know, that it kind of works out naturally. You
first debuted at Edinburgh Fringe in the 1970s and have been there many times since. Obviously, Edinburgh Fringe isn't going ahead, as far as I know, this year. Did you have any plans to go there, or you think you might return next year, hopefully?
Yeah, I did. I was going to do a one-man show, which I hadn't done since '99. And I was going to do it last year as well, but that didn't work out. So this was the year I was definitely going to do it, and now that hasn't worked out. Hopefully I'll do it next year, but I'm not even sure that next year, that is to say 21, things are going to be back to normal. They can't be until there's a vaccine for this virus, and that's going to take more than a year.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I don't want to start, you know, I'll go and get food and stuff like that, but I'm not going to take risks or risk anyone else's health until there is a proven, not even trialling the vaccine, until they've proven that it works. So an interesting thing I read about you is that you have an Erdos Bacon Sabbath number of 9. Can you explain to everybody what that is? Obviously, the Erdos number refers to the Hungarian mathematician Paul Erdos, but what are the other things?
Oh, well, interesting that you think the obvious one is Erdos. I'd say Bacon was the obvious one. You know, Degrees of Separation from Kevin Bacon, which is the old game that you would play, 2 movie actors. You know, so-and-so was in a movie with B, and then B was in a movie with C, and then you could always get to Kevin Bacon in 6 moves, because Kevin Bacon was sort of known for being, you know, being in anything basically.
Yeah.
Being in, so I've got a Bacon number of 2 because I've acted with. It has to be professional work, so I professionally acted with Mike McShane. Mike McShane was in a movie with Kevin Bacon, so my Bacon number is 2 because I'm 2 away from him. Erdos was a similarly prolific mathematician, as you say. I think he used to sort of go and stay with people because he had nowhere to stay or something, and sort of write papers with them. So everyone has written a paper with him or someone that's written. So my Erdos number is 5, but that again has to be peer-reviewed, professional scientific publication.
Right.
And my PhD was published in the scientific journals in parts, and so I've got a Erdos number of 5. And then your Sabbath number is about working as pro musician. And I've worked as a pro musician on the radio with Herbie Flowers, the old bass player that played the bass on Walk on the Wild Side and lots of other things. Yeah. And Herbie Flowers worked with Tommy Iommi from Black Sabbath. So you add the numbers up. So my combined Bacon, Erdos, Sabbath is 2 + 5 + 2, which is 9. And that's quite good because it's very unusual for people to work at the top level, whatever, in more than one field. So, people like Brian Cox is in there because he obviously was a musician, has done appeared as a character, and he's also obviously got scientific publications. But there are kind of weird people like Stephen Hawking's got one of these numbers because he was sampled on some dance track. So that means he's worked with some producer that worked with Black Sabbath. So he's got, and it's just a fun thing. I mean, in a sense, you could pick 3 areas randomly and find yourself with obviously the lower number is better because you're closer connected. But yeah, that's what it was. And so it's just a fun thing.
And so I guess because people have a little bit of extra time now, they can go off and get a quick PhD and then create some amazing music and then get their own number.
I guess so. The bloke who started the project, I think he did it a few years ago because he was a bit bored. I think he's actually taken the website down now where people used to send in their claims. But I screen grabbed a list somewhere, which is quite funny because it's funny being on the list for Stephen Hawking, and there's no other way I'm ever going to get that other than by this stupid thing. And Natalie Portman's on it because apparently she did some academic thing.
Have you got any advice for anyone that wants to get into stand-up comedy or indeed improv?
Yes, get out and do it. You can only learn by doing it. And with improv, do it with people who are in the same level as you. Don't do it with people who are amazingly better or amazingly worse. Find people that are about the same level of enthusiasm, commitment, the same amount of time as you've got, and they will, and then you can sort of learn together. With stand-up, it's stage time, which unfortunately is going to be so hard now because stages are closed. Even doing the open spots and the new material nights, the unpaid gigs, that was how you learned the way to do it, the way not to do it. So that advice is difficult to take now because there's the opportunity, the platforms have gone. There may be a way of doing it with an audience over this internet, I don't know. The Comedy Store does a new performance night called the Gong Show, where you've got a few minutes before you get gonged off, and they're doing that with an audience, but an online audience on Monday nights. So that is where the interesting stuff is happening. But get on a thing like that if you can, if you want to start, because the more you do it, the more experience. Which is why the Comedy Store players. That's why we've got something there's no shortcut to, which is 35 years on the clock.
Tell me a fun fact about you, something people may not know.
Whenever I get west of Swindon, my Somerset accent returns.
Well, now we're going to have to go with you when you go west of Swindon to see if this is accurate.
Well, hopefully I'll be, at the Bristol Hippodrome at some point with Paul Merton. Hopefully if all the tours start up again in the future.
Your 25th birthday is going to be on the 29th of June this year. Have you got any plans how you might be celebrating it?
No, I normally celebrate my birthday at Glastonbury. Stephen Frost has another wonderful improv group with, there's overlaps between all the improv groups of my generation, but the Improv All-Stars Stephen Frost group has done the theatre marquee at Glastonbury Festival for 20 odd years now, 25 years. And that's normally my birthday weekend is at Glastonbury. We'll all be very sad not to be there. So I probably won't do anything this year. I'll save it up for next year.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to have about 96 birthdays to go out and celebrate on one night.
Yeah.
Obviously at the Comedy Store. Can you tell me what you might be working on next? Have you got anything in production? Are there more adverts?
I don't know. It's so hard to motivate yourself when you can't see a way of getting it out there. I have been very lucky to work with people I like, who are fun to be with, and I've stumbled into everything I've done. And there's no stumbling to be done at the moment because there's nothing to stumble into. So for the first time, I've actually had to sit down and think, well, what do I want to do? And I actually don't know. Something will come. It's the thing that I've got back into in recent years is doing stand-up again. And doing a solo show is, of course, the easiest thing because you haven't got to take with you a company of actors or a set or given under the circumstances, something easy to get out on the road is probably the way forward. But as I was saying earlier, it's not as much fun on your own. So what I really want to do is keep doing improv with good people, new people, the old people. It's such a nice community, and I'm very lucky to be part of it.
It's incredible, just the wealth of stuff you've got and the knowledge and experience you have, not just in one area, but in improv comedy, you've got decades worth of experience and all your knowledge in science and music and all this stuff, and that sort of shines through in everything that you do.
Well, it's because I'm very old.
Well, I was thinking about this because we're some of the youngest things that have ever existed, because the universe is 13.9 billion years old or something, and we're like the newest stuff that's been made on it.
Yes, we are relatively new, and we are just a speck in the past and the future. We're a very little bit of it, but we've achieved quite a lot in our little speck of a moment. It's I suppose everybody thinks, oh, what a time to be alive, but what we've achieved, and even in the middle of all the current mess, it's great to see, the spaceship going up safely, and all those achievements, which should be focusing our mind on how good it is to cooperate. And improv comedy is all about cooperation, and that's why people like watching it, because it's much nicer watching people be nice.
Really is. And so finally, have you got any messages for people watching the Sarah O'Connell Show and your fans around the world?
When you get messages, it's funny how the messages change. When we were all young and starting, you get lots of people coming out, oh, I really like your show, and being all friendly. And then years later, it's, oh, my mum really fancies you. And then now I'm getting, my mum used to really fancy you. So you can kind of see how it progresses through the decades.
So their mum's taste has got worse.
I think now I'm starting to get, oh, my gran really fancies you. So that's how it goes. But that's fine.
So Richard Vranch, thank you so much for coming on my show today. I highly recommend everyone checks out the Comedy Store Players live show, which is available to rent now. And the great thing is too, once you've rented it, I believe you can watch it as many times as you want until it expires at the weekend.
Thank you very much for asking me.
Pleasure talking to you, and thank you to everybody watching at home. Be sure to share, subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, and leave lots of lovely comments. We'll see you all again soon for another episode of the Sarah O'Connell Show. Bye.